Hey everyone, how's it going? This is Richard and welcome back to another stock market outlook video sponsored by MarketSmith. As always, we'll run through the major indexes, talk about their overall trends, then cover a few different sources of sentiment, the IBD Big Picture article, and finally the Wishing Wealth GMI signal. And at the very end of the video, I'll put all those different sources of information together and basically give you my take on the overall health of the market. With that said, if you do enjoy my analysis, please go ahead and take the time right now to leave me a like down below. It really helps me out and my channel. And of course, subscribe if you want to see more videos just like this one, along with tutorials and interviews with top traders and investors. With that out of the way, let's go ahead and dive right in with analysis of the QQQ, the NASDAQ 100 ETF. And we're looking at a daily chart here. Last week, you can see continued the negative trend and the weakness that we've seen pretty much since the Fed speech back here on this day. You can see the large downside reversal. We're now below the 50 SMA and kind of living below that as well. And we're below a declining 21 and 200 SMA. So pretty much on most time frames, the trend is down. Now we are technically oversold, and we'll go through a few indicators later on in the video that also kind of support that. That breadth is very poor, but by no means does that mean we have to bounce. It just means that you should be aware that we could have pretty nasty or sharp upside reversals and quick kind of rallies to the upside. So it's not necessarily a time to be pressing the short side. And right now, just the trend in general is down. With that said, let's move on over to an hourly chart just to get a better sense of kind of what the short-term trend looks like. And you can see once again, this was the Fed announcement day, and we've pretty much been making lower highs and lower lows since then. We are holding this low at this moment, but right now the trend just looks down, at least on this time frame. And now going over to a weekly chart, you can see that this gives the kind of longer term perspective, and we remain below a declining 40-week moving average. This line in black here, this was the downside reversal week, and now we've got 2 straight weeks the downside, now below the red 10-week moving average as well. And right now you can see the overall trend on this time frame is down as well. And even going over to a monthly, you can see that we kind of remain in this longer term downtrend here, and we just had a negative month in August, and we're not starting too hot in September as well. So it's time to be cautious if you're a longer term investor, position trader who follows the cancel methodology. Most likely you're pretty much in cash as of this moment, waiting for those setups to appear, and any starters that you started in the previous rally, most likely you've gotten stopped out. And even if you're a more active swing trader, it's definitely not time to be super aggressive to the long side. Most likely you press some shorts right in this area, or even as we broke the 50-day. But right now we're so extended to the downside that the risk reward is pretty tough to justify. And one more thing about the daily chart on the QQQ, you can see on this Thursday, we had a strong close off the lows. And the expectation after such a strong day is that we might have the start of a counter trend rally. But you can see the market was so weak that we weren't even able to manage that. And Friday we had that poor close after that gap up. So that's just another reason to be a little bit more cautious. The market is really weak right now, and we'll just have to wait and see what happens. We don't have to predict. All we have to do is actually read the price action that's actually occurring and keeping note of strong stocks to potentially enter if the market does turn things around, but also be cautious given that the overall trends on most of the time frames are down. Moving on over to the S&P 500. You can see that the chart is pretty similar. You can see we also failed at that 200-day moving average, and we remain below a declining 21 EMA, and we were rejected at that 50 SMA. Although volume wasn't lower than that strong upside reversal, and we're holding this low. So definitely this is a key area to watch on both the S&P 500 as well as the QQQ and NASDAQ composite as well. And now moving on to the IWM, let's take a look at how small caps are performing. Once again, rejected at that 200 SMA. This remains a key level, and also rejected at that 50 SMA on Friday last week, but holding above this low right here. And going over to the IWO, which shows kind of growth stocks in general, you can see that once again, rejected at that 200 SMA as well as the 50 SMA. And lastly, going over to the FFTY, you can see that this is extremely weak. We weren't even able to rally to that 200-day moving average, and the 50 SMA is also acting as resistance, or below declining 21 EMA. So in terms of the general market and the indexes, not a great look, and we're just pretty much on a downtrend on most of the time frames. And in terms of overall groups and individual stocks I'm watching, my focus is pretty much on solar and biotech. Those have the strongest setups. If the market does form some type of rally, that's what I'll be focused on. So first, going over to EMPH, this has been acting super strong since this breakout on large volume. holding near that 21 EMA, leaking a little bit down here towards the bottom of this consolidation area, but nevertheless acting a lot stronger than the market. You've also got Airy within the same group acting well, decent close off the lows and holding near that 21 EMA. FSLR is probably the strongest, although it doesn't really have much of a setup here, but you can see how strong it's been relative to the market. Just look at that relative strength line. And also within biotech, just going through a few names, you've got RITM. That's been super strong. TMDX in medical equipment, acting super strong. You've got SWAV as well. And you've got a few more names like IMCR and CPRX are acting super strong as well, and setting up potential flags and short-term DTL entries. You've even got a 2-2 reversal here on IMCR potentially through this high. So those are a few names that I'm watching within that solar group, as well as biotech and medical equipment. Let me know a few names that you're watching as well, and I'll be posting my entire weekly watch list video later on today, so make sure you're subscribed and stay on the lookout for that. And before we move on to sentiment, I do want to quickly touch on a few breadth indicators. First, looking at the McClellan here in TC2000, you can see that right now we're relatively oversold, but keep in mind that stuff that's oversold can get a lot more oversold. So don't just buy and hope. Wait for a setup, manage risk if you are playing, short-term counter trend bounces. Also taking a look at the T2108, this also shows that breadth has significantly declined from this rally. We're back down to 31% of stocks being above their 40-day moving averages on the NYSE, which is pretty poor. And you can see looking back that you've got some intermediate term bounces that occurred when it got near 20, but for more major corrections, we have to see a drop down towards that 10 level or even below that to get a really meaningful longer term bottom. So that's just a few indicators I look at in terms of breadth, and just something to be aware of because breadth is pretty poor as of this moment. And moving on now to sentiment, let's start with my Twitter surveys. And we saw a slight increase in bullishness from 21% to 28%, although this remains pretty low. Looking at the name exposure next, this is dropping, which is a good sign from a contrarian point of view. But you can see that we can definitely get a lot lower down near 20 here, which we got during the intermediate bottom that we saw previously this year. But it is a good sign from a contrarian point of view that this is dropping. And moving on to the IBD big picture, you can see that the headline is stock market falls despite jobs report. Putin move boosts these groups. Discuss the overall action here, and also a few names standing out. And overall, their current outlook is an uptrend under pressure. And lastly, we've got the Wishing Wealth GMI signal, which is currently red since August 29th. And the GMI score was a 0 of 6 on Thursday. So overall, my current stock market outlook is that we're back in a correction and we're in a downtrend on most timeframes, and that kind of intermediate rally is definitely over, and we just have to wait to see what the market brings us. So let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. What stocks are you watching that are holding up really well and could be potential leaders? Let me know down below. And if you did enjoy this video, please go ahead and leave a like down below, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you guys for future videos. Take care.